murderer to me, and if you're terrible at the job, Pop will fire you. Deal? Deal. Great. Want to hang out with me and have some coffee? I couldn't believe my luck. What were the odds I'd meet my crush and get a job working with him and get invited to hang out with him, all in under 5 minutes? That night, we talked for hours, staying long after the coffeehouse closed. It was the first time since I had left home that I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That same comforting feeling washed over me now, as present-day Pete sang, "Check yes, Juliet. Are you with me?" Something about his singing voice always made me smile. "Hey, Pete," I exclaimed, hurrying to give him a big hug as he came around the counter to greet me. "Have I mentioned how excited I am that you're going to run the shop for me, Jules? And happy birthday, by the way," Pete said as he lifted me in the air and squeezed me tighter. Laughing, I replied, "Yes, you might have mentioned it a couple 100 times. And thanks." "What's an old woman got to do to get some attention around here?" called a gravelly voice. Pete put me down, and I immediately swooped in on the tiny, white-haired old lady sitting on a nearby stool. I threw my arms around her and said, "Gertie, I have missed you." "Shit, I just saw you a couple months ago. What the hell's the big deal?" Pete's grandmother, Gertie, grumbled as she gave me a kiss on the cheek. Gertie was, by far, the coolest old person in the entire world. Her colorful language could make a sailor blush, and she always treated me like one of her own. "Gertie's here every morning, so you two will be seeing a lot of each other," Pete said, smiling. Gertie insisted her grandchildren call her by her first name and would never allow them to call her Grandma. She thought it made her sound old. "I'd rather the two of you would be seeing a lot of each other. Hell's bells, when are you two gonna bite the bullet and have yourselves a good Gertie!" I cut her off just in time, trying not to blush. "We're just friends. Always have been. And there especially won't be any biting of anything now that Pete is my new boss." There was a time when I would have loved to have been something more than friends with Pete, but that was ancient history. A lot had changed since then. She shrugged. "You can't blame an old woman for trying." Gertie had always wanted us to get together. Groaning, Pete said, "I have a girlfriend, Gert. You know this. You've met her several times." Turning back around to her coffee, Gertie shook her head and muttered something. I thought I heard damn floozy and beat with an ugly stick. Pete's girlfriend, Cecilia, was neither of those things, but unfortunately she also wasn't one of my biggest fans. We had gone to college together, and for some reason she never seemed to like me. Then again, I couldn't stand her either. Pete rubbed his hands together excitedly. I had forgotten how infectious his smile could be. He was one of those people who could light up a room just by walking into it. "So, are you ready for me to introduce you to everyone?" "Absolutely," I replied, my enthusiasm tinged with a sudden feeling of apprehension. As happy as I was to be back here and to have a job, I was extremely nervous about taking over the reins of Java Jive. Pete's father, George, opened Java Jive 20 years ago. It was his baby. He nurtured it and grew it into a thriving business. Once his health started declining last year, George wasn't able to give as much of his time and energy to the place, and it started slowly losing business. George had died a few months ago and left his coffeehouse to Pete, who already had his dream job as a sound engineer for one of Nashville's best recording studios. Pete didn't have the time or the knowledge to run the family business, but he couldn't stand to let his father's dream die with him. That's where I came in. It was my job to make the place profitable again. I knew I could never begin to fill dear old George's shoes, but I could sure as hell run a successful restaurant. My confidence in my skills, unfortunately, did nothing to calm my first-day jitters. Pete jumped up on top of the diner counter, dangerously close to Gertie's coffee cup. Completely grossed out, I grimaced. Standing on an eating surface was frowned